Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They will be a garland to grace your head and a chain to adorn your neck. My son, wisdom calls aloud in the street. She raises her voice in the public squares. At the head of the noisy streets she cries out. In the gateways of the city she makes her speech. For the waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will live in safety, and be at ease without fear of harm.
Church, how y'all doing today? You guys alive and well? Anybody been foolish this past week, since the last time we talked about being fools? Some of us, right? We don't want to admit it. The reality is, this series on Wise Up, Letters to My Son, this is Solomon writing to his son, saying, son, don't be a fool. Don't do the things that I've fallen into. Don't fall into the same trap. I mean, literally, Proverbs would probably be the very first, if you want to call it, self-help book ever written. It's almost 3,000 years old. So as we read the Proverbs today and go through, this is 3,000-year-old wisdom. And what's amazing about what we're going to read and what you're going to see is that the problems have been the same all along. People don't change. The issues that we face are the issues that we face. Humanity is still facing the same stuff and having to work through the same stuff. So how can you be wise and be the kind of people that enjoy life, that are blessed and a blessing to others, and not fall into the traps of fools? I think, that self-awareness to realize. Now, what's going to happen as we read through this, and as we've been doing it all along, and as we read the Bible even, our tendency is always to be blind to our own weaknesses and well aware of the weaknesses of the people around us. Right? So as you read some of these things, you're going to go, yeah, I know somebody like that. Maybe the person sitting next to you is somebody like that. Now, do not sharpen your elbows, married couples, okay? Because I know you want to. But the reality is, and I think the truth about wisdom is wisdom realizes it can be a fool. When you are self-aware enough to go, maybe this is me that I'm reading about. Not my husband, not my wife, but it's me. And so let's think about that as we go into the scriptures. And so what we're doing today, we're doing Fools Part 2, right? We're going to talk about foolishness again. Like last week wasn't enough. There's even more foolishness that we're going to learn about today. So let's just dive right into it. So we're going to do the Fool Part 2. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 talks about the dishonor of the fool. A fool, or when we're being foolish, is a better way to say it. The Bible says, Proverbs 3:35, the wise will inherit honor, but fools display dishonor. There is a dishonorable way in which a fool displays themselves. It is a disrespect of culture, of others, because fools honor nobody but themselves, right? The fool is the most egocentrical person on the planet. I am the one that matters, and no one else matters. So they say things and do things that are shameful, disgraceful, fail to respect other people. It's kind of like you're in a funeral, and everyone around you is grieving the loss of somebody, and the fool is sitting there cracking jokes and laughing. It's like, don't you honor people? Other people exist. You're not the only one here. And your happiness is not the only thing that matters. And wise people understand that other people exist. And the foolish person thinks only they exist. And only their problems are the ones that matter. And only themselves. And so we have to begin to think about the context of others around us instead of just dishonoring people around us because we're foolish, we're selfish. The next thing, and then the next little area we're going to talk about that is fools fall into the trap. And I mean, this next area is like, we can turn this into a whole series all by itself. But the tongue, foolish talk. The way that the fool talks, or when we're being foolish, we talk. And I'm just going to go over two areas. There's many, but we're just going to talk about two. The first one is the idea of the babbling. The incessant talkative nature of the foolish person, or when we're being foolish. Proverbs 10:8 says, "The wise of heart will receive commands, but a babbling fool will be ruined." Now it's interesting. There's two parts to every proverb often, a contrast or showing one thing versus another thing. And here it's wisdom that receives commands, or a fool that is babbling. See, very often we're so preoccupied with our own talk, and we like to talk so much that we miss the commands that God is trying to show us, or we miss instruction. And a wise person receives instruction, and a fool is too busy talking to even hear the instructions. But this idea of receiving instruction is huge. If I could say anything to my son, if you could say anything to your son, it would be listen to instruction. Listen. Don't think you know it all. You do not. Listen. And I illustrate this by, anybody like Taco Palenque here? Anybody Taco Palenque? Anybody work there? It'd be interesting to see if anybody worked there. Anyway, one of the things that I was introduced to when I came to Laredo was the famous pirata. I'd never heard of a pirata. And so someone was like, "Oh, you got to have a pirata and go for Taco Palenque. They're really good." So I went and I had a pirata. I was like, this is very good. So imagine you just got hired and you're working at Taco Palenque, and probably a teenager, right? There's a lot of young people working there. And you're working in the kitchen, and they say, "Look, this is Taco Palenque, and this is the way that we create our piratas." And they begin to instruct you on how to create a pirata. And then your response is, well, in my house, we do them this way, and my dad taught me how to do it this way, and I do the piratas this way. Now, what do you think about the person working at Taco Palenque? How long are they going to last if they continue with that mentality? They will not receive instruction. And basically what Taco Palenque managers are going to do is say, "Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming in, but we're going to have to let you go because you cannot learn and will not listen to instruction as to how to make the pirata the Taco Palenque way. And we're going to have to let you go." And you see, very often in life, the fool is so busy talking and not receiving instruction that they begin starting getting fired from life, in a sense. Their life starts going downhill because they're making poor decisions. In the business world, it's called seeking best practices, right? Businesses, even churches, anything where you go, "Hey, I want to find out what's working and I want to find a best practice," that's called learning. That's called being a teachable spirit. But the fool doesn't listen. They just talk and talk because they know best. And what ends up happening when you're trying to instruct a fool, this is what ends up happening. "Okay, I guess you know how it's going to be, so good luck with that. Go ahead, do what you're going to do anyway," because you're obviously not listening and not willing to take instruction. So be wise. Listen and receive instruction. Another thing about the fool and their tongue is not only are they babbling and not listening and not taking instruction, but they have a tongue that is slanderous. And this, you could put gossip in there. You could put all kinds of different. It's a bit wide area, and like I said, we could do a whole month-long study on just the tongue. But slander is something interesting. Proverbs 10:18. "He who conceals hatred has lying lips, and he who spreads slander is a fool." Why? Why? Well, think about it. What is slander? Anybody know what slander is? There's a little difference between slander and gossip. Slander is negative talk about other people. Now, it could be true, right? Gossip is usually just a flat out lie. So if I know something that's true about somebody, but it puts them in a negative light, I'm kind of putting them down in repeating that issue, that's slander. And any leader, if you're a leader of anything, you know that you're going to have people that are foolish working with you. And so you know this is going to be happening. Like, it gets no surprise when people come up to you, oh, Pastor, somebody said something about you. Like, that happens. There's people out there, and some people are wise and some people aren't, and they make foolish decisions. They start talking negatively. And, we all accept criticism and should be open to criticism, but slander is wanting to destroy someone with your words. And that's foolish, because God calls us to lift people up, to edify with our words, to bring people up. And so a wise decision is to edify people. A foolish decision is to slander them and put them down. What happens too is the person you're talking to, that you're slandering with, like, I'm going to tell you something really juicy about this other person. In the back of their mind, they're thinking, if you're telling me about them, what are you telling others about me? Because you have no qualms talking bad about people. And so what happens if you start becoming known as a slanderous person, you're going to start losing your friends. Because they're going to be like, I can't trust. I can't be open. I can't be real. I can't be myself. Because anything negative about me that you see, you're going to go and tell everybody. And that's not good. That's not positive at all. John Chrysostom, he was an early church father in the year about 400 after Christ, said slander is worse than cannibalism. That's an interesting quote. Slander is worse than cannibalism. Proverbs 17:28 says, even a fool, when he keeps silent, is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he's considered prudent. So some of us, even maybe if we are a little bit foolish, if we would just be quiet, we would look so much wiser. I remember one time I had somebody counseling, and they just came in and they started talking and talking, and they were talking and talking and talking and talking. I'm listening. That's very good. Tell me more. And I'm just listening. And after about 45 minutes of talking, they were finished finally, and they said, oh, thank you, Pastor. I feel so much better. Your counsel has been wonderful. It's been great. And they just left. And I'm like, I didn't say anything. I could have been in my mind like playing a video game or something and not said anything. But they just felt that I was so wise and gave them so much counsel. I didn't even say anything. So there's that idea of just it's better to be silent than to say stuff, especially if you know it might be taken the wrong way or hurt somebody. So another thing that happens, and slander is part of this, all of these kind of tie in together. The foolish ways kind of work together. Maybe you're being slanderous. And then what happens is the next point, Proverbs 18:6. You begin to cause strife. It says, a fool's lip brings strife, and his mouth calls for blows. A fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are the snare of his soul. A fool's lips bring strife. Have you ever been sitting there with, maybe you're married, you have your husband, wife, you're sitting there having a very peaceful evening, and then usually the person never knocks. They just walk in, and usually they don't knock, and they walk in, and they usually are talking when they walk in. Do anybody have a family member who's contentious, who causes strife? Family member, relative, friend? And you can be having a very peaceful night, and they just walk in, hi, blah, 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 blah. You'll never believe it. And somebody, and I'm angry, and they're angry, and everybody's angry. And then they start trying to, and then they're maybe they're gossiping, maybe they're slandering somebody, and they're trying to get you in on their anger, and then they start causing, and it's all this drama and strife and anybody have anybody? Anybody is that person, right? We don't want to admit it. Sometimes. You had peace, and then they walked in, and now there's no more peace. Peace just flew away. And like it's not just once, it's not just twice. It's like a characteristic of this person. Every time they walk in, peace walks out, and headaches start happening, and frustration starts happening. And they're always telling about a story about how they're fighting with somebody new, or but more often than not, they're fighting with the same person over and over and over and over again. And not only that, this person very often doesn't just have conflict with other people. They're just talking to themselves conflict. Oh, and I should have this, and I hate that, and I can't believe this, and I can't believe that. And they just, it's like self-talk. Anybody know somebody like that? Anybody is somebody like that? Proverbs 20 verse 3 says this. Keep away from strife. Keeping away from strife is an honor for a man. Any fool will quarrel. I mean, my default is just to start a fight. I mean, something comes up, and my default, I'll get back at you. I'll start fighting with you. That's my default switch, and I have learned to say, somebody comes in contentious, and I just say, okay, let me listen. Tell me more. What are you going through? What do you feel? How can I serve you? How can I help you? So we have to learn to turn off that default switch and become wise, because any fool can quarrel, but keeping away from strife is an honor. Proverbs 29:9 says, when a wise man has a controversy with a foolish man, so now you have a wise person and a foolish person, the foolish man either rages or laughs, and there is no rest. Like you're trying to be wise, and then the person is just coming up with crazy arguments, and you're like, wow. And very often, the reason for the foolish argumentation stems from the next point. Because remember, all these things tie together. Contentions, slander, the mouth, the dishonor, and then why? Verse 12:16. A fool's anger is known at once. A foolish person tells you when they're angry instantly, the minute that they're angry. But a prudent man conceals dishonor. A prudent man learns to conceal and hold back their temper. See, my dad was like that before he got right with the Lord. And even after he got right with the Lord, that in Spanish is the patron, the habit that's like a rut in your life. That habit was in him to get quick-tempered. And it took him years. And finally, 2 months before he died, my dad was at peace. He had cancer. He knew he was going. And he had a dream about him and his brother, how they used to fight and try to be like, they were very, very, competitive all their life. And he spent his whole life competing with his brother, and he was always angry, and he was always angry. And he realized my anger stems from my competitiveness with my brother, and I'm at peace with my brother. He forgave his brother. He forgave himself. He let go of the anger, and for 2 months, he was a peaceful man. And I remember my stepmother goes, I wish he would have had that revelation 20 years ago. So I lived for 20 years with an angry, angry man, even as a Christian, and then 2 months of actual peace. I don't want to be that person that people had to put up with me because I'm short-tempered and angry. My grandmother had it. That's where my dad got it. I was under a pastor one time who was very quick-tempered. And very often when anger is being used, it's used to manipulate. It's like, I'm angry at you, and so I'm going to want to make you do what I want you to do, and if you don't, I'm going to stay angry at you. Or give you the silent treatment, make you feel really, really small and really, really bad. And we use our anger to manipulate, to control, to force people to do things and act in ways. And that's foolish. That's not honoring other people. It's a lot of things. That's why Proverbs 14:17 says, a quick-tempered man acts foolishly, and a man of evil devices is hated. People hated my dad. People hated this pastor guy that was really quick-tempered like that. I don't want people to hate me. I mean, I don't live for people. I live for the Lord. But you don't want to be the one that's the reason it's because your own issues. And then Proverbs 29:11, I remembered it in the NIV version, when it says, a fool gives full vent to his anger. That's how I memorized it, because I had to do the little thing to memorize it. A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps himself under control. In the NASB, it says, a fool always loses his temper, and a wise man holds it back. If you're angry, that doesn't mean you have to tell the universe that you're angry. You can actually sit on it, meditate on it, pray about it, think about it, And then if you really have an issue you want to talk to the person, sit down calmly after you let your anger diffuse to go and just say, hey, there's an issue I think we need to talk about. But just blowing up and manipulating and screaming all over everybody, that's a quick way to become a fool and people to not love you. I don't want that, right? And then the foolish person they're angry, they're manipulative, they're controlling. And then verse 13:20, it says, he who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools suffer harm. The fool begins to cause harm to those around them. That's why I always challenge people, who's your inner circle? Who are the people that are the closest to you? If the people closest to your inner circle, the voices that you respect and listen to, the people that you really, it matters what they say to your life and your heart. Who are those inner circle people? If any of those inner circle people are fools, they're going to be whispering things into you that will be destructive. Oh, that's stupid. Why do you believe them? You shouldn't go to church. You shouldn't follow God. And this is, there's the obvious illustration of the teenager, right, who has a bunch of friends that are doing bad stuff, and they're not doing bad. Of course, your teenager would never do anything bad because your teenager's perfect, right? But other teenagers, they're the bad ones. And so your son or daughter goes off with some teenagers, and let's say they decide to make a beer run at a little 7-Eleven or whatever, or Circle K or whatever they call them. And so your son and their friends go in, and some of his friends grab a 30-pack of whatever beer, and they run out, and then the police catch them all later that night. And your son didn't have any beers, of course not. He was just in the car while the other ones stole the beer and drank the beer. Then your son gets arrested along with the rest of them. And it could be true. I'm not being facetious. It could be true. Maybe your son was just hanging out with them. But guess what? That inner circle of people will destroy your life. There's another word for this, by the way. It's called mentorship. And it works both ways. If you want to go downhill, just find bad friends and you'll go downhill. If you want to go up in life, find good friends and you'll go up in life. Find people who will encourage you, who will teach you. Like, I have a friend that wanted to learn how to do business. And I said, find some business people that you really respect, admire, and say, hey, can I hang around you? Can I watch how you do things? Could you show me how to run a business? And then they mentor you and you learn and you go up in life. But a fool doesn't listen to any of that. And a fool picks bad friends that bring them down. And then they complain, like, I don't know why bad things are happening to me. Like, you were with the people when they stole the beer. Right? It's not a secret why bad things happen. You chose. Which leads us to the next point. Because remember, all these things tie together. Proverbs 26:6. He who cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. Can you imagine cutting off your own feet? Sounds like a Saw movie or something, like cut off your feet. Drink violence is he who sends a message by the hand of a fool. If you hire somebody to do a job and they're a person without honor and with all this bad character stuff we've been reading about, they're going to destroy whatever you think you were supposed to be doing. And you've hired them to do a job and they don't do it, they destroy it, and it's just as if you were to cut off your own foot there, folks. That's what the Bible says. Can you imagine? Anybody have a business here or had a business and you've hired people? You hire people to work for you? Now, all of you who have had that, or you have people working under you, you have one or two workers and you look at them and you go, oh, I wish I had 100 of them. If I had 100 of people like that one, this job, this career, this place would explode. And then you always have the one or two that go, I'm having to prepare my heart to have that conversation to let them go. Because they're not working. They have a horrible attitude. They're slandering. They walk in with drama. They don't listen. They don't take instructions. They don't obey. They don't do what they're told. And all the list of stuff we've just been talking about the last 2 weeks. I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person when someone goes, when I think of a good worker, that's the person I want right there. I want that to be my name. Some of the Proverbs are even humorous. Proverbs 26:10, like an archer who wounds everyone. Like the archer's walking around, hey, I'm going to shoot people. You imagine if I just pulled out a gun and was like, and you're afraid you're going to get shot at. Like an archer who wounds everyone, so is he who hires a fool or who hires those who just pass by without knowing anything about them. Be the wise person and not the fool. Next week, we're going to get into what it is to be the wise person. So, a fool slanders, a fool causes all kinds of lack of peace because they're always starting fights and babbling and not listening to instruction and angry, and they corrupt other people and they spread like a disease. It's no wonder the next point happens to fools. Proverbs 19:10. Luxury is not fitting for a fool. Money is not a strong suit for foolish people. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know what to do with it. As a matter of fact, Proverbs 21:20 says there's precious treasure and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but the foolish man swallows it up. See, the fool doesn't know how to save. They just they consume everything they get, and they're always broke, always nothing. Why? Why? It has to do with the wisdom, the way they manage their whole life. Maybe they can't keep a job because they're slanderous and poor workers, and they can't keep a job, so they've got no money because they can't keep a job and they don't get promoted because they're horrible workers. There's 101 reasons why fools, and I've been there. I've been all of these, by the way. So we're not judging anybody here. This is just a reality we can all be in any given time in our life. They did research. A third of lottery winners within 2 years are broke again. 1/3 of people who win the lottery. I'm talking about millions of dollars. There's Alex and Rhonda. They won $13 million. They accepted payments of $666,000 over a 20-year span. And then they filed bankruptcy a few years later because of their lavish lifestyle, enduring a bunch of legal expenses resulting from family drama. And then they were charged with tax evasion. And Rhonda was sentenced 2 years in prison, was fined $1.1 million. Like, not only did I win the lottery, now I'm $1 million in debt. That's crazy. Because there's no self-control with a fool. They wouldn't know what to do with it if they got it, and they didn't. And I think some of us, the Lord is just wanting to bless us, even financially. He's just wanting to bless it. He's going, I'm not going to give it to them yet. They're not ready. Because if I gave them the blessing, they would blow it up. They wouldn't know what to do with it, or they would do a lot wrong with it. And so some of us are being held back from the blessings we could get because we're being foolish and we're not wise, and God wants to teach us. Which leads us to the next point. Because reality is not happening for the fool, they live in a fantasy world. Proverbs 17:24. Wisdom in the presence of one who has understanding. Wisdom is in the presence of one who has understanding. But the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. Oh, here's what a fool says. Oh, when I win the lottery, oh boy, can't wait till I win the lottery. It's like, buddy, you ain't going to win no lottery. Be wise with what you've been given. No. When I win the lottery, then I'll be wise. Then I'll do smart. Then I'll make good choices financially. Then I'll do good things. And we all know it doesn't happen that way. Always chasing the next thing on the ends of the earth. I just can't wait. The next thing, I'm gonna be so rich. I'm gonna go do this and that. And they've spent the money they never made. They've already dreamed of all the things they're gonna do. I'm not against dreaming. Everybody should have dreams. Let's go for it. But put a dream with a plan. Put a dream with hard work. Put a dream with some counseling and some wisdom and some support and help from other people. And get a good strategy. But a dream with no wisdom and no support and no strategy is never going to happen. But maybe if I win the lottery, I'll get that. Dreaming is great when you have a plan, a strategy to accomplish it. But just dreaming out there, that's the fool. Looking at the ends of the earth. I'm going to win the lottery someday. And I think the hardest thing about this whole subject is this last point. And this is the true definition, I think, for all of us when it comes to being a fool. Proverbs 26:11. True definition where it just comes to the root of the issue. Like a dog that returns to its vomit is a fool that repeats his folly. 27:22. Though you pound a fool in a mortar with a pestle along with crushed grain, yet his foolishness will not depart from him. The deal with foolishness, true foolishness, is that they do not learn. Even when the pounding of life comes against them. I mean, it's the friend or the family relatives like, can you help me? I need some help this month with my rent. I really can't pay my rent. And you start digging a little bit. Well, what happened? Well, it's just that when I got my money and I got paid and I went and put it all in the lottery. Remember, they're chasing the dream. I want the lottery, or I went to the maquinitas, or I went and I got drunk and I drank a lot of drugs or whatever. I went and partied and I don't have enough for the rent this month. And then you help them, right? You help them. And you tell them, okay, next month you're not going to do that, right? You're going to do the right thing. You're not going to go get drunk. You're not going to do the maquinitas. You're not going to spend it all in the lottery. You're going to save your money and have enough for your rent, right? Right? And they're like, oh, next month I promise you to do it. And then next month comes around and ring, ring, ring. Oh, I really hate to be a burden, but can you help me with my rent again? And there comes a time when you go, I love you. I will help you when you get some help. But if you're not going to get help, I cannot help you. You have to want the help. Get into rehab. Get into some program that helps you transition out of this lifestyle. Do something. I'll go counseling, anything. Just give me a plan, any plan, and I will help you. Oh, I'm not going to do a plan. I'm not going to organize my life. I'm not going to get my life in order. Well, then maybe you can't pay the rent this month. And you have to let life teach you the hard way. And some of us are interfering with the lessons that people need to learn because we're enabling them to continue in their foolishness rather than having the love to say, I cannot help you until you want to get help. And those are hard discussions. Those are hard discussions. So to summarize this week's foolishness, we talked about the fool being dishonorable, not honoring people, not loving people in honor. We talked of the fool that is just incessant talking and babbling and slander and gossip and all that kind of thing that ends up causing strife and being a person that is always argumentative, full of drama, always a conflict going on. And angry, right? That's all part of it, angry. And this kind of negativity is infectious because you do it and someone else does it to someone else and it just kind of spreads. This kind of person, it's hard to hire them. They're not good workers because they have all this drama and honor, this dishonor and stuff going on. They're not good listeners. They don't learn. They're poor workers. They're poor money managers because of all these problems and stuff. They always have this going on. They live in a fantasy world, always dreaming and talking and not doing. They never learn. That's pretty depressing. Like, this is tough. And we all know somebody or have been that somebody or maybe are that somebody. And this is time for the Lord to speak to us. This is the time for the Lord to say, hey, there is hope. You know why I know there's hope for people that are like these things? Because I've been in all these categories in some point in my life. And God has seen me through. And I've gotten the kind of help that I need. And I've worked through these things. And we can tell you testimony of people who have fallen into all of these things and even more. And God has set them free from bondage, free from addictions, free from habits and patterns in their life that were destructive. And there's hope. There's hope for a fool. The Bible says wisdom is on the streets calling out. And so any of us, if we're in a foolish mind frame, wisdom is calling out to you today to say, hey, there's hope. You can change. God can give you the power. You can be transformed.